Hey guys, my name is Tom, and I recently participated in my first game jam. If you don't know what a game jam is, it's basically an event where a group of people all try to build a game within the given time frame, usually based around a certain theme. This particular jam was a collaboration between myself, a few other small game dev YouTubers, and our communities. We all had 48 hours to make an entire game, and we ended up with 21 entries. Different jams have different rules, especially regarding the use of pre-existing assets. While some require you to make absolutely everything from scratch before the deadline, in this particular jam we were allowed to use existing art assets. If you're interested in playing any of the games, you can check out the jam page on itch. There's a link in the description. So the theme for the jam was announced at 10 PM my time, and it was the unexpected. My goal was to get through the brainstorming and idea phase before I went to bed, so I immediately got to work. Coming up with cool ideas for my projects is probably one of the most difficult stages for me, most likely because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I struggle to just roll with something incomplete or imperfect. The fact that I now had to come up with an idea under pressure only made this worse, and I managed to blank straight away. I decided to search up synonyms for the word unexpected, and this gave me a bit more to think about. Some of the more interesting synonyms which I thought I might be able to work with were unanticipated, out of the blue, abrupt, and startling. When I saw out of the blue on that list, something about it just latched onto me and wouldn't really let go, and I started thinking about how I could interpret that phrase literally. I began thinking about blue things like the sky, the ocean, and then more specifically, the Great Blue Hole, which is a giant marine sinkhole off the coast of Belize. I did a bit of reading about that in an attempt to get my creative juices flowing, and I learned a few really interesting things. For example, at around 90 meters depth, there's a floating blanket of toxic hydrogen sulfide, beneath which there's zero oxygen, and when researchers got to the bottom, they found a Coke bottle, a GoPro, and 2 dead bodies. Anyways, I started thinking that maybe I'd make some sort of survival game where something bad comes out of the Great Blue Hole, but that seemed to be something I wouldn't be able to accomplish within the 48 hours. I also had a weird idea about the hole turning out to just be a massive toilet, which would have definitely fit the theme, but I couldn't come up with any solid gameplay mechanics around that concept. Eventually I ended up with a concept where you're a fish and you have to swim through geyser-infested waters while trying not to get blown out of the water. Then I had the absolutely genius idea to call the game Out of the Blue, but with blue spelled as the past tense of the word blow, not the color. The wordplay is probably way over the top, but when I came up with it, I thought it was hilarious. Probably because it was 11:45 by then and I just wanted to go to bed. By around 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Wednesday, I had basic player movement in place. This included a bare-bones chunk system so that the player could keep swimming indefinitely. The main reason it took this long is because I kept changing my mind on how exactly I wanted to implement certain things. I really just had a general concept of what I was making, but the details continued evolving as I added mechanics and had new ideas. At 6, I took a break, and by that point I had a basic game loop with scoring, plus menus to navigate between the title screen and the game. After eating dinner, I modeled a geyser and implemented it as the obstacles. That's where I ran into problems. For some reason which I still don't understand, my geysers would frequently spawn in ways where they severely overlapped each other. This was happening because I was positioning the geysers randomly within their chunk. However, I was also doing a physics.checkbox cast to make sure there weren't any existing geysers in the way, and yet they kept overlapping. I can't even begin to express how confusing and frustrating this was, and eventually I decided to just check the distance to all the other geysers in that chunk. This ended up working, and it's actually the first time I ever used a do-while loop. I've used do-while loops in some basic programming tutorials which are simply meant to teach you about their existence, but until now I had never found a practical use for one in one of my own projects. After getting over the shock of finding an actual real-life use case for the neglected do while loop, I spent some time adding a water plane so you could tell when you've been blown out of the water. For this I used my existing water shader from my pirate game, although in hindsight I probably should have just used a regular plane. It doesn't look that great from the top-down view I'm using, and it was a bit of a hassle to get working since I had to strip out a bunch of stuff I didn't need without breaking it. On Thursday, the final day of the jam, I spent most of my time doing cleanup. I did however model a fish and animate it, which was definitely the most interesting part of the day. Before this jam, I had never touched Unity's animation tools, and I hadn't done any sort of character rigging in Blender, so it was a bit daunting at first. Besides completing my game, my main goal for the jam was to learn how to animate models, and I'd say I succeeded. Of course, I've only learned the basics, so at the very least there's probably a bunch of tricks I'm unaware of which can make the process much quicker, but I'm happy with how my fish's swimming animation turned out. After that, I overhauled my menus by stripping out all the default Unity UI, because it's ugly, and I added music and some bubble sound effects. I was very tempted to skip sound effects and music since I was running out of time at that point, but I'm really glad I didn't. It's such a small addition and really doesn't have to take long, and it made a huge difference to how it felt playing the game. I found the bubble sounds online somewhere, and the music is AI generated by eCrit Music. I finished up the project, built it, zipped it up, and uploaded it to itch. I didn't spend much time on the game page, so it looks a little sloppy, but at that point I just wanted to get it done. I submitted the game at 10:08 PM, which means I technically took 48 hours and 8 minutes, but something was messed up with itch's time zones. On my end, when the theme was announced, the jam page still said it wasn't starting for another hour, which was really weird. According to itch, the submission deadline was technically at 11 PM my time, but I decided to finish it up as close as possible to 10 PM because I wanted to do the entire thing in 48 hours. Anyways, this was a really great first game jam. I learned how to animate stuff, I successfully built a game in 48 hours, everyone was super friendly, and now the idea of participating in larger game jams feels a lot less daunting. I probably could have done a lot more in those 48 hours, but I didn't want to stress myself out by cramming in too much, so I didn't spend every waking moment working on the game. I don't really regret that, but at the same time I kind of would have liked to add a dashing mechanic, which I didn't in the end because I ran out of time. It was an overall good experience, and if you've never participated in a game jam yourself, I strongly recommend doing so. It can be a good challenge or a nice change of scenery if you're working on a larger project, and you'll probably learn a thing or two. If 48 hours seems like way too little time, there's plenty of jams that go for longer, you just have to look around a bit. Maybe I'll even organize a jam in the future. Let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in that at some point. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to destroy the like button, and don't forget to check out all the jam games. There's a link to the page in the description. Also, if you'd like to join me on my journey as I develop a multiplayer game, take a look at my devlogs and consider subscribing so you don't miss any future updates. With that said, thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you again next Saturday with another video.